G'day and welcome to David Joshua Ford Live. This is episode 103, and on today's show we're taking a look at DJF 4.2 because I have some really exciting updates that I've been working on for quite a while and I've finally got them out to you guys. So we're going to take a look primarily at DJF Clock, DJF Log, and then also the YouTube module that I've added to my profiles. So this is all of the A10 profiles and all of the Canon PTZ profiles, those sort of larger ones, now have all of these functions in there. And the goal of this is to make live streaming easier for you, particularly if you're using YouTube. So being able to control YouTube parameters from within Companion and also to automate some things like your run of show and building on what I've done in the past in terms of DJF queue, having a run of show queue that you can execute things in a certain manner. If you're new here, we talk a lot about live streaming, photography, video production, so drop your questions in the chat. We'd love to hear where you're from and what questions you have as we go along. So let's kick off. And the first one that I wanted to look at was DJF Clock. So this is kind of like a run of show clock to help you sort of control the getting into your show and getting out of your show more easily, more efficiently, and also some sort of visual feedback that you can put up on a monitor somewhere in a studio to kind of keep track of that. And that's what I've been doing. Even on the Streamdeck over here, I have my clocks. So there's really there's 5 clocks, and I guess there's also time of day, so maybe 6 clocks. So we've got time of day, and then we've got the pre-roll, the show start, the show end, the wrap, and then also a segment clock that can be sort of reset continually throughout the show. So let's take a look first at the keypad. So when if you want to program your clocks, you need a keypad. So let's jump over to where was that one? Let's go to close-up over here. All right, swinging around. I'm running on A10 mini today, so I don't quite have as many inputs available. So on the home page, we go to clock, and this is the clock page. So you can input the time here in 24-hour time, so it's hours, minutes, seconds, separated by the semicolon. And then along the bottom here are the clock times that we have, and then the segment duration. So for example, my pre-roll on this clock is set to 1425, which is, what's it, 1402 now, so 22 minutes away. And then start of the show, 27 minutes away, ending the show, 57 minutes away, and wrap is sort of 2 minutes after that. So these are the countdown clocks here for pre-roll, start, end, and wrap. And they will change color and they'll get bigger too as they get closer. So green means you've got an hour. If you're under an hour, go yellow and it'll just show you minutes and seconds. And then if you go under a minute, it'll turn orange and it'll get into the big numbers for counting that down. And then we've got the time of day clock here, and then we can change our numbers in here. So for example, 1425, let's just say I wanted to start at 1405. So I'd go 14 semicolon 05 semicolon 00. You can see it's entered in up here, and then I can just select the clock that I want to assign that to. So pre-roll, and now I've got 1 minute left until this pre-roll clock reaches 0. See how it's changed here to orange because it's under 10 minutes here. And once we hit here, it'll go bigger numbers. So you get a nice big countdown. So this kind of keeps me on track for when I'm starting a show, because I can see that, okay, in 52 seconds, it's starting. If you long press this button, you've armed it. And so this is actually going to automatically start the pre-roll sequence if you've set that up. I'm just going to turn that one back off again, which I'll get to in terms of the YouTube side of things and getting things up and running. But these are the clocks that you have along here. Also show start, show end, and the wrap. And then we've got a segment clock over here. So if you hit it, you can start. I've got 15 seconds set on it at the moment. And so that'll just go down to 0, and then it'll just keep on going negative. So if you wanted it to count up, you could just set the clock to 0 and it would start counting negatively. So segment is hit 0. And also my pre-roll here is about to hit 0. And so here I could see I'm, 2 seconds into the pre-roll sequence because it's negative time there. You can always hit the segment to start that sort of 15 seconds again. Or you could change the time. Say if I wanted to make it like 1 minute and 5 seconds, I would go no hours. I'd have 01 and 05, so 1 minute and 5 seconds. And I'd hit the segment duration button here. And so now I can see this has updated the duration of the segment to be 1:05. And so now it's green, showing I've got over 1 minute. And then when it goes under 1 minute, it gets bigger, goes yellow. Just so getting lots of visual feedback for you, so you can sort of keep an eye on the clocks as they go along. And again, anytime you want to turn it off, just hit the button again, and you can turn that on and off as you like it. You'll notice there's some buttons down here. So the I'll get into that in a second, because I had the part of this is being able to have visual feedback that is somewhere in the studio. So unfortunately my studio is in pieces, so I can't quite show you properly, but if you imagine like a monitor somewhere up with a sort of shortened version of that clock, so you can see all of the clocks that are countdowning to certain types of parts of the show. So I'm going to demonstrate on a laptop that I've got here. So if I go to this one over here, I think. So instead of my laptop, just imagine that this is a nice big monitor that I've put up in my, in my studio. And you can, using the emulator, you can create a clock like this. So if I go back over to Companion and under, I think I'm in the wrong one here. Anyway, this will work. So under clock, it's just the row and the column count have been truncated so that it is just using this section of the clock for a larger display on a screen. But the net effect is this kind of thing, which then you can just put that full screen on a monitor, so you can have some nice big sort of visual feedback of where you are up to in your show. The next one is being able to automatically arm and disarm the triggers, which I was sort of getting to there. So let's come back into here. Down the bottom here, you've got this segment inactive or active. So that'll just turn the countdown clock on and off. Whereas when you disable the countdown clock, it'll restart the duration. So it goes back up to 1 minute. Whereas if I just turn that off, I can turn that back on. And like that. And then this next button here is being able to link the segment to the queue. So I've been using DJF for a while. My profile system, I had DJF Q, which is 24 technical cues that you can lay out to just have a single button and step through them. So that's how I run each show. And so the clock is now sort of built into the queue to help automate parts of it that you might want to automate. So what that is doing, if I come back to my close-up here, is so linking segment to queue is off at the moment, but if I turn that on, then that means like segment to queue, I need to set a shorter amount of time. Let me go, what do we have, a minute? So I'm going to go 5 seconds. So I just want a 5 second duration segment. So a segment's going to be 5 seconds, and it means that every time I advance the queue, it's going to reset that clock. Hopefully that will, I don't have the right screen here. So if we come over to queue, this is where you can, if you're triggering a queue like this, I'm going to use some empty ones here because I don't want to misfire the wrong ones. But the clock back over here, if I come back to clock, I've got to start it first. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then we go negative. And it'll show up here on the segment. So if I go to queue, if I hit a segment, it's reset the time here back to the 5 second duration. So it just gives me an idea of where I am up to in a segment. So each cue, so like pre-roll, starting the show, part 1, 2, all of that, they can have different durations that you can add in there so that when you trigger a technical cue, your duration will either count down to 0, or if you set it at 0, it'll just sort of count negatively, and you can keep track of how long each cue has been going for. So that is, let me go back to clock, that is link segment to cue. The next one, which I don't think I'll demonstrate because I feel like I've got 2 shows set up here, and I don't want to like mess up the show that I'm on. But it's being able to take that cue idea of when you trigger a cue, that it's resetting the duration time for that segment, and then it is, once it gets to 0, it's going to automatically trigger the current cue and move on to the next one. So it means that you could build a run of show with 24 cues, and each one could be given its own duration, so that when, you know, the first segment's a minute, and when it gets down to 0, it will automatically fire the next segment. And if the next segment has a duration change on it, then it will change that. So each segment can have a unique amount of time, and when it gets to 0, it can automatically move on to the next one. So where that is here. So if I've turned this one on and also turned on advanced cue to the next segment, you'll notice that this is highlighted here. So anytime these buttons are highlighted up here, it means that the auto trigger is enabled. So I could turn it on for wrap, which means that when, you know, in 50 minutes time, when the wrap clock gets to 0, it's going to trigger the wrap sequence. I'm just going to turn that one off. So our segment is here. I'm trying to remember what I've got on here. I'm just going to turn this off. I'm not going to demo this, but basically with these turned on, you'd be under the cue page, you would hit a button, and then it would count down, and then it would automatically jump to the next one. So that should give you the idea about that. And then the other side of it is just being able to manually set a clock and a countdown. So maybe you just want some sort of stopwatch, and I was showing there before that you can start and stop a clock. So these don't have to be tied to the cues and to the segments and all the show if you just want to sort of keep it simple and have a clock that you can look at over, like, for example, on my computer here. So you could have on your clocks just sort of a segment that is giving you a countdown to the next segment, and you can just, if you go over that, nothing's going to happen. So you can always set that manually, is what I was saying there. So this ties into what I was talking about with on the show page now, which is page 4 in the home profile. I've got corresponding to the clocks for pre-roll, start, end, and wrap. I've also got sort of show sequences that will be triggered. So if you turn on that auto trigger, when the clock hits 0, it's going to hit these buttons and run that sequence. So let me jump over to that one over here. So under clock, I've set my pre-roll show start. I'll use the show start button because that's a little bit further away, and I'll come back and change that, but I'll just demonstrate under here. So under the show page, there's the corresponding pre-roll, show start, show end show, and wrap. These all say hold down the bottom. So if you press it, nothing happens. You just have to hold it for half a second. This is just so you don't accidentally trigger a whole show sequence. But this is how I start my show. So I have a whole sort of booting up sequence of getting a live stream underway for the pre-roll. And then at the top of the hour, that's when the show start would start the show. So, and you'll see the auto buttons here that you can press to trigger it or not. So if I turn on auto start, you'll see that this is highlighted and it's showing that the show start, and there's a time here in 15 minutes, is going to automatically trigger. I'll just turn that one off. And if we go into, let me see, I'm just going to pull up my computer, not 11. Oh, sorry, I got to get to the right address over here. Let me just get back up to the computer address, which is .23, and make sure I'm on the right page for, here we go, show page. All right, so we jump across here. So this is what the show page looks like in Companion, and these are the 4 buttons that I was talking about. And so half of it is this sort of internally Companion controlled run of show, and then the other half is YouTube, which I'll cover in a bit. So if we click on show start, for example, you'll see that the press and the short release have nothing in them because we want this held for 500 milliseconds. And then what's in here already is this set raw value of show to start. You can just leave that one there. It's just showing that it's going to give feedback that the show is starting. This one, and then the trigger release, which is just releasing this 500 millisecond button. Otherwise, it would just sort of stay pressed when the auto trigger fires. So these first 2, just leave those ones alone. And then from there on, you can just sort of change what you want. So for example, I have in here a trigger press and release, and I'm pressing 9711, so page 97 button 11. So for example, if I went over to 9711, you'll see this button here. So in my run of show, where I've got 1 to 8, 9 to 16, 17 to 24, these are all my cues that I can put commands, actions into each one of these to start an ATEM or start recording or light cues, anything you want to put into these buttons. And so I've set it so that my show start button will be triggered when the show start sequence begins. So I jump over back to here. And then I've got some wait time, which is not necessary. That was more for showing the feedback. And then just leave this last one here, which is changing that show value, the raw custom variable of show to on. That's just going to give feedback that the show sequence is running. So everything between those first 2 and the last one is yours to kind of customize and put in what you will. Just to give an idea of like my pre-roll, for example. So I've got those first 2 variables of the show being in pre-roll state and the trigger release button for here. And then I'm pressing my pre-roll button in my queue. And then I'm just doing a whole bunch of things to start the show. For example, resetting my YouTube chat and resetting the Google Sheet list that I'm pulling data from. And I'm also resetting the log that we'll get to in a bit, setting an ATEM file name. So I can actually so when I have all of these files on my hard drive after a show, rather than it being a bunch of random names, I can actually have the date and time, and then I'm pulling in this YouTube unfinished is the show title of YouTube. So it means that when I'm on my hard drive, I can very easily locate which file was recorded. Starting a time session, a session in timestamp just to log things in Notion. A web presenter is not connected at the moment, but that would start the web presenter to stream. And then on YouTube, going live. And then I've got a bit of time. I've got 20 seconds here in between starting the encoder, like the ATEM Mini or the web presenter, and doing the YouTube go live command just to allow it time to come through. And I'm starting the recording. And I'm sending a YouTube message to chat, just saying where you're joining from and what's on the show today. And then I'm starting a chapter marker in YouTube for pre-roll at 00 to get that going. So that's an idea of how I sort of put my pre-roll together. And then when I'm finishing the show, the wrap here has a whole bunch of just, stopping hyperdecks and VLC and cameras and all that kind of stuff. And so that should sort of give you an idea of these 4 shows. So the idea here is that the pre-roll is often getting you up and going. The start show is usually when you are your encoders and everything's running, but you might open your microphones and you're starting a presentation. End show is, cutting microphones and running end credits, all that kind of stuff. And then wrap is when you've, stopping the actual encoder and no longer pushing out video to YouTube. So that's kind of the 4 sequences that I use there. And it's really handy, particularly the pre-roll I like, because when I have that on, where are we? I'm just going to shift click. So on automated control here, then it just keeps me on track to start a show and just sort of gets me going at sort of 5 minutes before the hour. And I can focus on other things, and it just takes another thing off my plate. While we're on the show page, you'll see I've got some ATEM commands here for going live or recording. We've got a shortcut to jump to the clock, and then we've got the YouTube buttons, which I'll come back to in a little bit, because for now I want to jump over to the next big section, which was DJF log. I've talked about this a bit on my live streams probably about a month or 2 ago, and I released this as kind of like a standalone metadata logging application. So it's basically a method of pulling cell data off Google Sheets into Companion and then being able to also push it back out to Google Sheets. So, for example, I'm using that to basically pull list content into Companion. So think of it like a journalist has a bunch of questions and they want to sort of move through each one so they can hit a button and the next question will come up. Or if you're doing a commercial shoot and you've got a bunch of scenes that you're working through, you could, hit each time you complete a scene or a take, you can move through that. Or if you were like a house of worship, you might have a whole sermon which has different, events in it, a run of show basically. It's basically a run of show that you can pull in a whole bunch of different items and advance your way through it. Or what I'm using it for as a content creator is rather than having, so I have my DJF queue, which is 24 technical queues, but then within that, I'm often wanting to talk about a whole lot of sort of subheadings within each section, kind of like I'm doing right now. And so this is a way of not having to adjust your technical queues, but over the top of that, being able to pull in a lot more data. So let's take a little look at that. Let's pull up to Sheets, DJF sheet, this one. All right, so, and I have showed this before, so I will, I'll try and go over it a little faster. So think of a spreadsheet basically, and I've got a sheet called list. This is today's show, for example. And in column A, I just have each segment that I want to pull in. So I've got, including the technical cues. So pre-roll, show start, show the clock. So I just was talking through all these sections. And now up to DJF log. And so for me, the next item is going to be this talking about pull. We talked about, we talked about pulling the content from, content creators, journalists, house of worship, narrative, that kind of stuff. And the next queue will be pushing it back out to the log. The main thing to remember here is, so each row becomes a new list, a new point, and any text that you put in there will be pulled into Companion. And then column B is basically, if it has a 1 in it, it is also going to trigger whatever is next in the DJF queue. And if it's empty, then it's going to take an alternate action, for example, putting me back onto camera. So I can use that here, for example, because I am running this through my phone as a remote control. So where am I? I'm up to here. So push is, so I've talked about pull, and then push is the next one. And I can see that on my phone. And so it's not going to run a queue because there's no 1. It's going to just cut to camera. So if I press like that, I just pressed the button, which advances that. It has, it's pulled that content from that cell data and it's inserted it as a YouTube chapter. So now it's timestamped that we're talking about pushing data back out to logging spreadsheets and also wherever else you want to put it, like a YouTube chapter marker. And the great thing is I can sort of build that into a remote control on my phone, basically, which is basically this button advances the show. And the two options here are either it will do a technical cue of like, you know, the camera pulls out and the graphics come on, or if it's not highlighted here. So it's showing me that the next thing is, it's just going to put a chapter marker in and it's going to cut to camera 1 is the way that I've set this up. So you could change it to cut to a different camera or whatever else, or just do nothing. But that's a way for me to build a flow of a show where on certain cues I can lower music or pull wide with cameras or show certain things for bigger segment chapter headers. And then within a segment, so for example, I'm talking about DJF log at the moment, I can have some sub-content. And it keeps me on track in terms of all the points that I wanted to cover, and can sort of lead me through that. So let's take a look at the log page. I'm going to come over to here. So I'm back onto the home page and we go to log, and this is what this looked like. I've got a whole live stream on this, so I won't go into it too much, but basically we've got a Google spreadsheet, which is the list. So this is the incoming list, and I can choose which number list I want it to be. So I'm using list 1 at the moment. So you'll see when I've changed lists, I got 3 lists in there, and once I go to list 4, it doesn't exist. So NA, there's no columns over here. And then log is where it's going to, so what I'm logging it to. They're the spreadsheets, and then up here are the rows within the spreadsheets. So at the moment, I'm on row 1 because it's a different system. If I go to my other, where was my other one? This is my actual, so I'm running 2 shows at the moment to be able to demo something and then what I'm actually doing. So my actual show is on row 14 of that list spreadsheet that I just showed you. And what it's saying is into columns A, B, C, and D, it's going to insert this data, which is the way I've set it up, but you can change it, is time of day, the ATEM time code, and then I'm pulling in the list data from column A and inserting that into column C of the log sheet. And then other sort of comments that can go here, like live chat and all that kind of stuff, depending on what you're marking. And then marker next is the button that you would use to sort of insert that data and move on to the next log row and make another mark. So that's one way of running it, more in terms of just like logging data. But what I've got correlated to that is under the scene page now are these same buttons here, and I can choose the row that I want to execute. So this is, remember I said my iPhone, whoop, let me just slide back across. Hang on a second. I'm sliding things on my iPhone. Here we go. Remember we said we had 2 buttons. They're basically these 2 buttons in the background here, the next and Mac. So I've just created an emulator that those are the 2 buttons I want to focus on in terms of advancing the show, or else cutting to my Mac computer screen to sort of show you what I'm talking about. So it's a really simple remote. And so if I press it here, it's the same as pressing it there. And this just shows me what is happening next in the show. And this button will, I'll scroll back and forth. So as I'm moving back through the lists, see how this highlights. So here it's highlighted. List row 11. If we jump over to the Mac, you'll see list row 11. See how this has a 1 in it? So that was the marker that this is also going to trigger the DJF queue. So let's jump back to close up here. So, and it's highlighted this queue to show me that this cue is going to trigger. So at the moment I'm on part 3, but I could change where that is up to. So it's basically building a sequence that will match with the ones to, hang on, I cut back over to here. So that each of these ones are going to trigger the next cue, and it also advances it onto the next one. All right, so jump back to close up here. So this becomes a nice sort of easy show page. It means that I can control my technical cues or my content cues. You can also unlink these if you don't want the advancing of the this list here. There's a button on the off the page which will unlink it, and basically if they're unlinked then this won't be highlighted. But I can sort of jump around and choose where I was up to this one, row 14, and that will be my next cue. And so let's press that button, and you can see what it did there was it jumped, because there was no 1 in that list spreadsheet, it's not running the next technical DJF cue, it's running the alternate cue, which is just cutting to camera 1. So it just makes it easy to build in a little bit of sort of camera cutting automation to keep the show flowing rather than it just sort of being on the one screen. But the button that I just pressed there was sort of the next button, and that is, it's kind of like, imagine cue cards or a teleprompter, and this is really neat. And when I have my studio up and running properly, I actually have it so that within that I can, for 5 seconds, I push my teleprompter to put that text up on the screen so that I can sort of quickly scan the lead into whatever I'm talking about next. And then it goes back to my program feed for my confidence monitor. So that is over, let me see if I can pull up my, under log, under next. Okay, so let's cut back to the Mac. So on the log page, there's this next delay. So you can either have it 0 or 5,000 milliseconds, like 5 seconds. You can also just jump in here and, you could change it to, 7 seconds or whatever. I find 5 seconds is enough for me to scan the text and then move on. And so what that is doing is under here in the spreadsheet, and this gets generated when you hit the buttons in the profile to reset. So it creates a sheet called next, and then this column, I've just made the background black and really big, and it toggles next delay on or off. Actually, I could probably do that in, let me see if I can come back to this shot here, because it's probably an easier way to show you on this one. So if I go here, so I got this spreadsheet, and it's basically, imagine if in our monitor or teleprompter, we're putting our spreadsheet full screen again, view full screen. So you can kind of clean it up a bit like that. So, and that could even just be on a laptop, that's in line of sight for someone. So these are the, that's my sort of cue card teleprompter type thing, pulling from the list. And I'm going to start by turning off the delay. And we're going to go to, I've got list 1, and we're on row 1. So you can see what's happening here. So I'll go back to the start of the show. All right, so row 1, pre-roll. Down here it says pre-roll and show start and DJF clock and keypad set to run show. So this is, an example of a cue card that is updating. So every time I advance onto the next segment, it's showing me what is coming up next so that I can sort of keep moving through with cue cards. But where the delay works is it can hold that on screen before it changes. So if I turn on this 5-second delay, then when I advance to the next cue, it's not going to happen. So remember, we were, jumping anywhere we want. And then if I turn on the delay, now when I advance 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it advances. So what that means is if you're working your way through content in a queue, then you'll be talking about a topic, and then in the line of sight you can see that, okay, I know that next I need to talk about the link segment, and so when you hit the queue button, you're going to have 5 seconds of that before it shows you what's coming up next. And that also means that once you've started that marker, you have logged it at that time code, and you have inserted a YouTube chapter. If you've you can turn on that here to also insert it as a YouTube chapter as you're going through a live stream. So I'm talking about DJF clock, and then I go, all right, I need to move on to the next segment, and I would advance and say, okay, so link segment to queue when it's enabled. The segment duration clock will reset when any of the 24 queues and I missed that there, but it would just gives you an idea of, I'll do it again, so it's 5 seconds, just so you can quickly talk about something, and it just helps lead in and makes you a bit smoother, I think. I reckon it makes me smoother. So hopefully that was an idea of how to do that, and I think I did the delay as well. Let me just move my cues around. Scene page. And I think I did that. Okay. And let me see, list page. I think I showed you the scene page. Scene page. Yeah, I'll bring up the profile here. So when you get the profile, the scene page it's got some blank buttons where I'm getting confused because I'm running. So I've filled out my scene page. So this home page and then scene page, I filled this out with things like my mic, so I can like mute my mic if I need to cough and that kind of stuff. And then just my 2 cameras, wide shots, all that kind of camera stuff. And then this is where that sits. But when you get it, it'll look like this. So it's got blank space in here. And so you can advance where you're up to in the run of show. You can execute it, and then you can have your, camera 1 or PC input. You can sort of modify that. And then this is where you can either, have we got it? So it's enabled. Yeah, here we go. All right, so when this list queue is linked, then it's going to, once it hits something that has a 1 in the column, it's going to show you, it's also going to trigger this. At the moment I'm on Q12, which has nothing on it, so that's why it's saying NA. But if you uncheck it, then you'll see how this is no longer highlighted. It's showing you this is just like operating independent to your technical queue. And then this is the teleprompter where you can turn the delay on if you wanted to hold that on screen for a little bit longer. I think I'll turn this back on by default. And that was so this is usually how I run a show in here is, like I was saying, once I've got my actual show up and running, I'll be in the scene page here to advance my cues and then jump out for any other sort of macros I want to do in terms of, like this one. So like hitting a mid shot on camera 1 is how that works. But we can advance to that one, and we can advance to the next one, which is talking about the YouTube module. So as part of the 4.2 update, I've added in the companion YouTube module into my profile just to make it easy for you to be able to control a bunch of YouTube details. So that's things like monitoring how many people are watching the live stream, or the titles of the upcoming live streams, going live, stopping, stream health, all that kind of stuff. So let's jump over to the close-up here. And from the home page, I'm just going to select YouTube. And this is the YouTube page. There's sort of 2 sections of it. So the show page has a copy of some just sort of essential YouTube buttons in terms of viewer count, whether you're live or stopping it, and the stream health, like that. So, but then if you want more full control, go to the YouTube page, and then this is what we've got. So similar to the log, we can choose a spreadsheet to have for chat and chapters. So I'm going to come over to, so they're called like chat and chapter, but there's also a one in front of them. If I jump over to, so we want to look at inserting a live chat, and we start by doing that in a spreadsheet. So it means that before a show, if you've got a whole bunch of chats that you normally make, you can kind of like pre-type it all, and then you can either just, insert them sequentially by hitting the same button, or you can skip to certain ones and then insert it. So you'll see here chat, it's actually chat 1, but on here you can go new sheet. So if I hit, I'll delay pressing this just so you can see it, but I'll be pressing this new chat sheet and jump back over here. And if you look down the bottom, I just pressed the button and it has automatically inserted whatever the next number is. So before I was on chat 1, and so now it's inserted chat sheet number 2. And so shows that you build out, it's basically just put a comment into each row in column A and it'll pull from that data. So chat, where did my chat go? Over here, chat 1. So for example, these are the ones that I did on the start of today's show, which is, hello, where in the world are you joining from today? And then I've also got things like actual companion variable data in here that is in the spreadsheet and it's being pulled into companion and interpreted. So, on today's show, we're looking at, and then there's some list data here that's pulled from H2R, and then get started at, and then this list 3 is usually a hyperlink. So let me just undo that. So for example, if I go to, let me just pull this over here, the YouTube sheet. So you'll see here, these were the comments that I fired at the beginning of the show, and it is actually interpreted this row to, on today's show, we're looking at, and then this was the variable text that it actually pasted in, DJF clock run of show, clocks for pre-roll, show start, end show, wrap, and segment. Get started at, and there was no hyperlink in there. So this is where it's pulling from, DJF clock, pulling all this data from the variables, and then there's some of my show title up there. So just to show you that you can actually put companion variables into the spreadsheet, and then it will pull that in and interpret the variables and insert it into the YouTube chat. Let me see, let's pull this one back out. So that's the chat, and same thing with chapter. So, chapter is very similar to list, and I usually just use the list, but I wanted to put in chapters just in case some people wanted to run list data and chapters separately. So remember, I had set up list as like my whole run of show, everything that I'm talking about. So you could disable inserting this list data into YouTube, and then just instead you could have a producer who's built out some YouTube chapter markers, and because maybe you just want to insert, 8 chapters within a live stream rather than everything being put in automatically. So this is the same principle here. Chapter 1 is the sheet, and so if we jump over to YouTube, then you'll see I'm on chapter sheet 1. And if I go up to chapter 2, there is no chapter 2, so it's, whoops, I didn't mean to click that. Let's go back to chapter 1. And so that is the chat sheet and the chapter sheet, and then the row for the chat and the row for chapter. And same thing here, let's go back to chat sheet 1, and you'll see this will populate. And these are all of the chats that I have. And I'm just going to insert some of these. So if you're watching in the chat, you'll see these come in. So if I click this button, it will also advance. So I'll go click, hello, where in the world are you joining from today? Let me just drag this one over here so you can see. Oh man, I hate the way Apple resizes windows like this. That's really annoying. Okay, I'm going to resize my window so you can see what I'm doing. Here we go. So you'll see here that the chat also updated to row 2. So on today's show, we're looking at YouTube module. So I'll just click this again, and you'll see down in my chat that has been inserted in here, and it's also updated. But maybe I want to skip this one, get started at, because I didn't put the hyperlink in, so I can just skip that chat and then insert, drop your questions in there, and then it's NA because I don't actually have any. Where did my chat go? I don't have anything in row 5. So that's how that pulls that across in terms of inserting YouTube chapter markers. And there's more functionality within the page. So the other one is just opening pages, which can be kind of handy. Let me see if I can go to over here, make sure we're on the right. Is this gonna be right? So it's gonna do it on the local computer. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm on the right computer. Let me just see if I can find the right computer over at 716, 16 and 23. All right, I'm gonna go to open up 16. Here we go. And we're gonna go YouTube. No, I'm gonna go over here. All right, I'm gonna show you this button here, just so you can see what I'm doing on the Stream Deck. And I need to go to this computer. I'm actually in the other computer, 23. Okay, buttons. And we're gonna go to YouTube. So I've got open YouTube Studio page and open YouTube Watch page. So these are actually buttons I can press here, and it will open up the Studio page. So it's just like a really neat shortcut to pull up your stream data here. I'll just shut that one down. And then the other one is open up the YouTube Watch page, which is over here, and that's probably gonna get double audio coming through here. So 2 shortcuts there. Just note that it does open it up on the local machine. So if you're running Companion Satellite and you're looking at a different computer and you hit the open button, it's actually going to open it up on whatever machine is running Companion, not the screen that you might be looking at. So just bear that in mind. And lastly on this is just noting that I've built the YouTube insertion markers into all of the DJF queue. So if we come back to here, so these are my queue buttons. I've got out of focus camera. Come on, Canon. There we go. So when I have it enabled, so now each time that I press a queue, it is also inserting that button name into YouTube, like whatever's live in YouTube as a chapter marker. So it means that if you don't want to do the whole list type thing, you can quite simply, within these 24 queues, come to page 5. So let's go to, so just a note that page 97 is the kind of the skin that goes over the top of that. So you just ignore this page. It's just the overlay page. That's where the buttons get pressed on the actual screen deck, but the Stream Deck. But under page 5 is actually where you put in these buttons. So this is where I've built out my show here. And so this is button 1 to up to 8, and then all the way up to 24 are all of your cues. And you can just, create a button, and you could, in this queue, have program, like set program input. So we're going to, when we run this queue, we want it to go onto camera 1, and we could call it DJF On Screen or whatever, like that. And then this button text, once it's triggered, is what gets inserted automatically into YouTube as a chapter marker. So, and that's, you should notice if I go to open YouTube watch page, I'm just got to mute this or pause it. We've been going through this show, and you'll see here already as I'm going through, all of my chapter markers have been inserted live as we go here. You insert YouTube chapter markers. I think I've got this enabled for this one. Let me see if this works for, no, I don't think I do. Maybe Q. Okay. If I press, let me go back to close up and see if I can do this right. So I'm going to go to Q. This is my DJF on screen here. I'm going to press this, and then I'm going to quickly jump back over to my YouTube page because I think it comes straight in. All right, so DJF on screen, and then I'm going to jump over here, and hopefully that'll come in a couple of seconds. I think it does. I don't think you have to refresh the page. I think it just sort of comes in. Maybe not. Maybe it takes a bit longer. There we go. So it takes, 10 seconds for it to be inserted, but it means that you can be doing a live stream, and as you're going, all of your chapters being laid down that people can kind of jump to even while you're live. So that's really really neat. I like that. All right, moving along here, we've got just a couple more changes that are in the profile that I wanted to talk about, and then we can take some questions. The main one is that the DJF menu navigation system has changed a bit. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to go to my scene Q page. All right, so you may remember that our home page has 5 pages basically, like a home, shot, scene, show, and then a Q page. Previously, if you had a page highlighted, you would press the button again and it would go to the menu page. That's still there if you want to use it. And there's like menu 1 and menu 2. On the menu 2, there's a couple of just back-end things like looking at the system uptime, IP addresses, setting surfaces if you wanted to group multiple surfaces like 2, 3, 4 Streamdeck XLs, other things in terms of rescanning USB and all that kind of stuff. So that's still available there if you want to put some buttons in there. But most of the menus for jumping to programs is now on the home page. So all of the ATEM is here. So ATEMs, if you got the 4ME profile, it's got 3 ATEMs, ATEM 1, 2, and 3. This is just selecting which ATEM you're going to control. That's the ATEM 1. Go your auxiliary routing. Also, I've added in more auxiliary feedback here. So for example, I'm running this show off an ATEM Mini Pro, but this is a 4ME profile. So the 4ME ATEM can have 24 inputs. So these are they've been grayed out to show that they're not available because I'm attached to an ATEM Mini Pro, and so there's only one auxiliary out that I have available. So if you had 6 outputs available, these would light up and you could select them, and that's the sort of input page there. So we've got your ATEM control, auto select, jump, and jump back. Usually just keep this on auto select. Jump and jump back is more if you're doing like routing and you want to hit a destination and it automatically jump to routing inputs, and it sort of jumps in between those pages. But for most things, auto select, leave that on. And then clock, log, and YouTube. These are the new ones that we have in there. VLC and H2R is, as we've always had in there for a while now. I do want a few things I want to work on here, which may come in future updates, but aren't ready yet with VLC. H2R, I've added some buttons here in terms of auto logging, so you can choose if you want your on-screen comments to also cause a YouTube chapter to be inserted. And separately, you can choose if you want when those comments are displayed on screen, if you also want to log that in your Google Sheets log. And this is, yeah, that's probably the same there. PDZs, and yeah, so that's basically it. And also this end page here that doesn't click through. So it just means that, you know, if you go out to auxiliary and you're out here doing things, you can, you know, always hit the sort of X button in the top, and you'll come to a hard stop here, rather than like this sort of page where you would bounce between them. So DJF home, all of your applications there. And then you've got shot, scene, show, and cue. And when that button is highlighted, that's where you can access the menu if you want to put additional menu jumps in there. It makes it handy because it's things like so we've got the log on the YouTube here, but if I'm working on the scene page, for example, which is normally where I spend my time, with this layout, I've also got the log button in here. So if I go log, I've jumped into the log page, but when I exit out, I've come back to the scene page. So I don't have to, it won't land me back here and then have to select scene again. It means that it's very easy to jump away to the log and come straight back into my scene page. Do I have anything in here? Show. Same thing with like the show page, you know, shortcut to YouTube if you want to get the other functions. I hit YouTube, I can do my, you know, insert chapters or whatever. And then if I exit out of that, we'll come straight back to the show page, is some of the navigation there. A big change to note, or a small big change to note, is that the Canon PTZ presets have been changed a bit in terms of what data they save for the first 10 presets. So we've got over here on the homepage, so PTZ, these are all of the cameras. I've only got 2 connected here. And under here, you can have up to 36 presets to recall. A while ago, I added in sheet names just to refresh on that. That's actually pulling from the PTZ spreadsheet. So again, just with the PTZ connected, it'll be a page in your spreadsheet. And I've got cameras 1 to 6 is columns A to F. And you see I've just got a bunch of like, you know, test data in here to populate it. But it makes it very easy to arrive at a venue and just plot out on a sheet of like, okay, camera 1, I want to have wide, mid, close. I'm going to offset. I want to show rack 1, rack 2, and then I'm going to show the wing. And for my show, I've got some like starting looping positions, 9 and 10. So now what I'm talking about is these first 10 presets only save the PTZ and focus data, and they don't save any of the camera profile settings. So under, let's see if I can get into PTZ1. Hello again. So it's not going to save any of these, you know, color settings and all that kind of stuff. It's just going to save the focus and wherever your PTZ position is. And so you can still, on your profile, I've got sheet names on. And so under recall, so from 11 to 36, these ones will save everything. And from 10 back to 1, these ones only save that. And the reason for this is I wanted to create a bit more of a, I was finding that when you turn up at a venue, you often want to set sort of a global exposure for your camera and sort of adjust that separately to what the PTZ settings are. So it means you can kind of set your white balance, set your exposure, all that kind of stuff. And then if you need to make changes later on, as lighting changes can change, you can come into your profile in here under adjust, and you can adjust your gain, shutter, iris. So you can adjust it as you go, but you don't have to go back and save over the top of all these presets. So it makes it much faster to, select a, I've got a mid shot here, and maybe I just want to like offset it a bit and then resave it, so now I can go to here and back to here, and it's the new position. So I don't think you saw that. I think I'm on the wrong thing. I think on super source where you can see both. I was saying I can come in here. I can still manually adjust all of the gain, shutter, iris, but then for the I'm still not showing you, are I? Let me come to this one. This is what I mean. I can come in here and adjust the gain, shutter, iris, white balance, all that kind of stuff on a global level. And then when I come in here, I can, select a preset, and let me cut back to this one. So you can see, so then I could like adjust, my framing, and let me cut back to this one. And so then I can hold to save over the top of that. And I've just saved the new physical parameters of this camera position, and I don't have to go back and make the sort of slight color adjustments to all of these other ones. So like I was saying, I find that a lot faster way of making changes during a show. So presets 1 to 10, just the PTZ and focus, and then after that it'll save all of your color profile settings as well. All right, let me see. Change Canon. What else have I got here? Previously, menu, Canon PTZ. I think that was about it. All right, I've talked a lot, and I need to check in with comments. So, thank you. Let me see where we go. Ooh. No, I think that's about it. Is it? Why is it not coming through? Is it coming through? I think it's coming through. Oh, here we go. I'm not scrolling down far enough. Zoop. Got to turn my iPad around. All right. We have David from. Oh, I'm gonna mess it up. Gaspésie. That's my best shot at it. From Canada. Great to have you here. Let me see. What do we got? Bazil says, for the clock, how did you hide the gray background and lower the gaps between the buttons? Hide the gray background and lower the gaps between the buttons. I assume you're talking about the emulator. How did you hide the gray background? So let me see if I can demonstrate over here. So I was on, am I on the right one? Doesn't really matter. Surfaces. So within your, like when you get the profile, there's a clock emulator that's been built. Currently, Companion doesn't save the setting. It'll save the row count, but not the horizontal offset or vertical offset. Fortunately, that is 0, anyway. But these pages will probably just be 0 because 1. So you'll need to come in here, type in clock, and then you can set the startup page to clock. And then if you hit the open button, this is where you would hit that. And you can see I'm 2 minutes past my wrap. So this is just an emulator page, and this is sort of the default behavior. I guess you can kind of, no, about that size. And then I'm just full screening it, really. So it's gray. It's actually gray, and then the buttons are black. So there is a bit of variation there. So maybe that's what you're talking about, but it's just full screen. Like you can see my mouse is still on here, but it makes it very easy to put in any computer laptop or monitor and get some sort of clocks up and running. Let's come back here. And what do we have? George, the log part is very clever. Nice, thank you. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out a workflow that I actually use every week. And so what makes this work for me is that the way I put a show together is I'll think of like a topic, like today is an update, but maybe I'm talking about a new light or something. Okay, all right, I'm talking about a light. I usually break my show into 3 segments. It could be like features about it, and then it could be pros and cons. It could be kind of those segments. So they become my technical chapters, and the lights sort of change there. But within each of those topics is like a whole lot of things that you want to talk about. And to keep me on track, I will just in my notes app on my phone, I'm just in there jotting down lists of like, okay, these are the 3 topics. And then within that indent and write out, like this is the wattage and this is the color balance and all that kind of stuff. And it means that then I can, because Notes syncs to the computer, I just grab from the Notes app, I copy and I basically just paste it into the spreadsheet here. And it just kind of, it's all in there. And then I can just advance through it as I go. And because I built in those cues in terms of like the ones in that column to say, is this something where I just want myself on camera introducing a topic, or do I want it to trigger the next cue? It makes it very easy to kind of run a show consistently week to week, but also sort of change it up and keep the flow going. So yeah. What else have we got? We've got, earlier you showed the clock emulator screen. Did you modify the gaps or the background color, or is it just the capture? If so, how? That's just the screen itself. But if you want more options, you could also look at Streamdeck, which I've talked about previously, but that is a way to have it running as like an overlay on the screen, so not in a web browser. But the web browser is really neat because it can run in any sort of phone browser. Like this phone remote thing is actually working really well for me. I was kind of surprised that I've sort of stuck with that rather than some sort of like, I think I've got it down here, clicker like this. Like I was trying to get the Logitech R500 to a point where it was like really useful, but the phone is actually gives me feedback on the screen. So other than if you accidentally swipe it, then it's been really good. Are all these templates optimized for Streamdeck XL, or can they be modified for other models? Great question. Thank you for that. It's been a challenge because, so actually with this update, I have discontinued the 15 button Streamdeck profile that I've got because it's too many variations for me to support. It takes a long time it's very manual to kind of lay out all the buttons and for each of the profiles. So if you have bought that profile, you can email me for a free update to the 32 button version. Because I don't want people to get left behind on that. It's just when you, instead of 32 buttons, if you've only got 15 per page, you need like a lot more pages to build it. It just becomes a lot of things to manage. I've also got, Elgato actually sent me a Streamdeck Plus, which I've been playing around with and trying to, again, my camera's not focusing here. Trying to make it sort of work and useful. Man, this camera's really not focusing. It's not, I don't know. has never felt comprehensive enough to build a profile for it. So I am sort of using it as put the clocks on it and show viewer count and that kind of stuff. And I sort of want to experiment with the rotaries now that I've got the Behringer wing. So the Streamdeck Plus I haven't really done much with. So it's really the Streamdeck XL is much easier to build out for because there's more buttons on a page and it's easy to kind of like just add multiple pages. So with my profile, you can actually have up to 4 surfaces laid out and they will move in sync. There's a lot of variables in the back end that are keeping multiple pages in sync if you add a second or third or fourth surface. And then I don't have it. I guess I've got it somewhere here. So I'm building this rack. I think it's this one. Which is, it's coming along. It's getting there. Oof. And I've got a Streamdeck Studio in here, and I'm weighing up whether to put 2 Streamdeck Studios because, you know, then you could have 4x8 plus 4x8, you know. And I'm also toying it with the idea of whether my profile would take that bottom row and make a copy over here so that you could run it on a Streamdeck Studio. Again, it's just like more buttons to manage, and I'm trying to avoid too much bloat because then it's like it gets harder for me to add in features and to push out updates. What I would like, and I've told Elgato this, although I guess it's more of a companion community thing, is I want the you know, lower 2 rows to be able to be reassigned to here. So it would mean that within companion settings, you'd be able to split the surface. So you'd go, okay, you know, the top part of hang on, how do you say it? So within your companion grid, you've got 8x4, and you'd say part 1, I want it to be the top half, and then you'd say part 2, I'd assign it to this bottom half, but it's displaying up here, and that way you could, without having to build out a whole new profile and sort of manage things across different devices, access all of your XL buttons on a Streamdeck Studio. I feel like that's got to be, I don't know, maybe it's like the rendering of the buttons is too difficult or something, but it's basically just moving them across. I feel like that's got to come at some point. I'd really love to get more of my profile onto the Streamdeck Studio, but it's, I don't know. And I also I'm trying to avoid building something where people need to buy 2 Streamdeck Studios because, you know, it's $1,800. It's like, it's a fair amount of money. And it's also more space in a rack. Yeah. Jules, great to have you here. You've been busy with ping pong, I guess, and I've been busy about to have baby, so that is coming up in my life. George, what mic am I using? I am using my main, when I do production, my main microphone is a Sennheiser 416, but in the studio I have another shotgun mic. I like being able to just like leave it here and not have to pack it away. And also it serves as if I'm doing an interview where I need to like shoot 2 people, then this is the mic that I would use as the second one, which is, I think I can pull up a bit, just sitting there. I actually don't know. Let's have a look. It's a Sanken CS1E. I think from memory it was about $800, and it's been good. I mean, I run a lot of this show on like a sort of, I'll have cans down here that I'll do an actual like sound check before, but then during the show I just have a earpiece in low so that I don't quite listen to my voice back, otherwise I would never be able to think. But it just keeps track of the audio so that if there's any stray, you know, like if I open a web browser and it's playing back a YouTube video and that's coming into the feed. I just want to keep track of that. So that's what I have the earpiece for, is just because I'm running this solo, just making sure that you're getting, you know, the right music and you're getting my voice and that kind of stuff. But it's not, I'm not really like right now, I'm not assessing the quality of the mix, you know. It's kind of like something I did at the beginning and then it's set. But I'm not moving too far, other than, I guess, you know, there's probably times I'm talking off mic and I will usually try and like project a little bit more just to compensate for that. And then other times I have like a lapel microphone if needed. And then at the moment it's just running through the ATEM with some compression and noise gate and that kind of stuff in there. But I have on, where is it? Rack 1 down here, I think. Oh no, wrong button. Okay, well this is the Behringer wing that is going to be coming up on the channel. I think I meant to hit this button here actually. That was the more smooth cut that I was going for. So yeah, this is going to be doing all of the mixing. And I think from that, I can probably just run a better mix in my ear while I'm going and not have the delay. So all of the mixing will be done from here, and then the master out of that will be sent to the ATEM, which kind of creates other problems which are a little bit annoying. Like for the hyperdeck, I really need to get the audio back into the wing, and that becomes another, I don't know, $300 or $200 audio conversion device, and, you know, more things to stick in the rack. So, you know, you try and simplify things and streamline it into one device, but then there's other things that come up. But I'm in the process of, like, I think first of all, I just want to get this rack up and running. So this is the video one. It's still in, nothing's like plugged in or, you know, really connected yet. Hence why I'm running this whole show on an ATEM Mini. And sometimes I'm, you know, thinking I'm on a super source and I'm not. But yeah, I think that'll be the first one. And then I get the Behringer up and running and functional, and I can actually operate it through the Stream Decks and build it into the show. And then I think I'll build out the audio rack a bit more, maybe with some more wireless, and I don't know, maybe I'll try and get a Holyland sponsorship or something to put some comms in it or something like that. That'd be nice. Because I kind of want it to be a full-featured rack that I can just sort of take and it'll do everything that I need to. What do we got? David, do you use Google Sheet within H2R? How do you use the two together? Google Sheet within H2R. I don't think you can. Like what I was showing you before was just a companion variable. So let me see if I can pull over here. Let me see. So, what am I showing you? I'm showing you over, let's pull over here. So I have in H2R, I just have a HTTP listener, and that is pulling in data from Social Stream. Let me see. So Social Stream is here. So I've just got my, you know, username in here, and the update is really great. You can just, it's, you know, select live sources, and it's very easy to select a show and activate that. And then that will pop out a little chat. So basically, Social Stream is scraping this data and then sending it to H2R. H2R is listening here, and then it's pulling it in, if I pull it over here, to social. So these are all of the comments that get pulled in here. And then I can trigger it like that, either from the computer or from my phone or iPad or wherever I am, you know, within Companion. I can hit a companion button here to clear it. And what you were seeing before is just, so this like variable data here, like DJF clock is like list 1.1. So if we go over to variables under H2R, this is the variable data that comes in here. So remember we had lists. I think I'm on a different list now. What am I on? I'm on this one, YouTube module. So it's saying list 1, column 1, I think, is that 1.1 YouTube module. And so 1.1 YouTube module is the text that this gets interpreted in. And so I've just basically copied that, and within the spreadsheet, that's where in the chat, I could put in this as data. So the way I've used that here is on today's show, we're looking at, and because this changes week to week, it means that I just have a single place where I can go. So when I update my show, I go, okay, next week will be 104, and we're going to talk about whatever, blah, blah, blah. I put this back so I don't get out of track. And I'll sort of update my segments and subheaders. And that comment here on today's show, we're looking at 1.1, DJF clock, and run of show clocks. When I start the show, this is back here. So that's row 1 is selected while the data is changing. Did that answer your question? Do you use Google Sheet within H2R? But I don't, I think you're asking also, you can bring in like a spreadsheet if you wanted to bring in a whole lot of data, but I don't think it's not live. Like it's just bringing in a spreadsheet data. So what would be great, John, if you want to bring in a Google Sheet connection, I don't know what API is involved in that, and then the Google Sheet data could come in here and populate it, and then you wouldn't need to, then you could just keep one list in Google Sheets. The thing I love about Google Sheets is that it's very easy for that to be shared with people on a team, and so they can be sitting on a laptop in the room or on the other side of the world, and they can be contributing to a show and just helping produce within Google Sheets, and then that is the data that gets then pulled into a show. So I really like that way of doing things. Let me just check the time here, because I know I'm quite over. I do have a bit of time, but so make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay. Khutso from South Africa. Good to have you here, and thanks for the question. Is there any advantage in naming a button by expression instead of text? Is the targeted button affected when one moves pages around? Expression around the text, is the targeted button affected when moving pages around? I'm going to answer how I think you mean. I guess I'll explain what text and expression is. So in the clock is a good example of that. So let's jump back to the Mac. And so we've got, let's go to my clock page. So an expression is, so this is text. And actually this is expression, which for this variable internal time doesn't make a difference. But text is just like text that gets interpreted like that, and as well as variables. And expression is more of like a number. So for example, the way I'm calculating the pre-roll here is if I had it on, oh no, that's doing it too. Where's the one that doesn't work? I thought I had something more complicated than that. No, that seems to be working. I think that's running down here in the feedbacks. Running over the top. Is it that one? There's a lot of layers to this. Okay, here we go. So if this was just the text, then you'll see here this would show up with all sorts of, like the actual text. But because it's an expression, what I'm doing here is I'm saying within here, where are we? I'm basically taking, where is it? In here, time difference. So I'm looking at the time difference between the internal clock and the variable that was the segment. So it's like the difference between how long the segment is, when it was time-stamped, and what the current time of day is, and that becomes a whole expression that is then a number, sort of like output like that. If you're interested in this sort of stuff, I recommend going to, where is it? Documents somewhere here. I always forget. Getting started. Here we go. Getting started on the side. We'll open up the documentation. If you come down to secondary admin controls, you've got all of your expressions in here. So scroll down, variables and expressions. This will outline all of the ways in which you can write expressions and operators, you know, greater than, equal than, all that kind of stuff. And functions as well, in terms of if you want to convert, like a handy one is the down here is like converting timestamp to seconds. So, you know, 10 minutes 15 turns out to be 615 seconds. And to do the reverse, you know, seconds to timestamp. So you basically type in that with an expression, and then you'd have your string of, what do you call them, custom variables within that, and then also format in terms of like put in, you know, SS in here in quotation marks, and then it will just return the seconds of that. Gets kind of complicated. Hopefully that helps. But yeah, there's a lot of deep diving that you can do in there. Rob, great to have you here on the live stream. I am doing well. I am conquering a 2-year-old who is going to get better at sleep. That's sort of an ongoing thing for the last 2 years, and you know, day by day. But other than that, I'm good. What would be an effective way to prepare multiple chat messages for a stream that would be fired in a specific queue? Multiple chat messages. Yeah, I think I showed you this in the stream. Just to recap, so I'll go back to my Google Sheet thing. So there's always a number against them, you know, whether it's log or list or chat or chapter. Next doesn't have a number, it's just next, because that's the cue card teleprompter type sheet. But otherwise, when I'm talking about chat, it's always like in capitals, and it'll have a number next to it in terms of the number of chats. So, sorry, the spreadsheet number. So chat 2, we had one that was over here, and we can type in Rob Fischer. Rob Fischer. Did I type that right? F-I-S-C-H. Sorry, F-I-S-C-H here. Rob Fischer says hi. Like that. All right, so now I've got this in chat 2 in row 1. So the main thing here is just work in column A. Don't put it anywhere else, because it's only pulling from column A. But each of these is, you know, like a new chat, basically. So you could just lay them out. And this could be show 2. You know, I've got chat 2, but then I've got chat 1 could be my other show. So, I mean, imagine doing like, I don't know, house of worship, where you've got the same venue, but different services. And so you want to have sort of tailored different content. You can sort of pre-prepare that in different chats. So chat 2. So now if I go to, let me go to, am I in the right, which one? Yeah, it doesn't matter, I guess. So if I go close up down here, all right, I'm trying to get to focus. So now if I go to my, what was it, YouTube page, I can, there's nothing in row 5, chat 1. You can also hold it. So this is just, I don't have 9 pages of chats. I can hold this and it'll jump back to 1, or hold it and it'll jump to, I put in 100 just as like a hard stop, but you could have more than 100 spreadsheets if you want, I guess. I don't know why you'd want that many. Too many to manage. But just, this will reset chat 1, and showing you here chat 1 is still in row 5. So remember we started chat 2 and we want to move back to row 1, and then we have Rob Fischer says hi. So I'll press that and I'll jump over to here, and you'll see it is spattered out there. So that's kind of how you would get a bunch of data from a spreadsheet into online so people can see it. But good, great question, because that was easy to explain. I see your main chapter is from, sure, but the rest is goose shit. Okay, so your 3 main chapters from H2R, but the rest is from Google Sheet when you mark your YouTube chapter. Yeah, so I guess, so I'll just explain. Think of like there's 2 queues. There's the DJF queue, which I talk about with 24 buttons, is like a technical queue. So it's like executing camera changes and lights and all that kind of stuff. And then there's the content queue, which is the list sheet in Google Spreadsheets. So if I go back to buttons here. So when I talk about DJF queue, I'm talking about page 5 is where you would input the data. And so just create buttons within this box of 24 queues. So, up to the end here. And what are we up to? I think I'm jumping all around here. Let's put on that one. And so these are your buttons here within the technical queue. But then on the show page, you can advance your show with this button. I'll show you within this button it's basically pressing 2 buttons. It's saying if it's true that there's a 1 in that spreadsheet, remember we had under list 1, if I'm saying if, we're on row 2, for example, if row 2, column B equals 1, that's all it's doing, then press 9707, which is basically this button, but sort of further back a couple of pages. So it's just advancing the next queue. And then I'm saying if it does not equal 1, meaning it's empty or does not equal 1, then press this button, and you could have this to anything. So, I'm just on page 332 at the moment, which is my close-up button that I cut to. So it's like a pre-built, it's basically cuts to camera 1 and also goes to preset number 3, which is a close-up on the camera. So if I click this, you'll see that it does this. So it's cut and it zooms in. It's also normally taking upstream key 1 off air, because upstream key 1 is usually this shot within a little circle down here, and I don't want to have a double up. So it's doing that. But you could, make it quite simple. So here it's close up, but if I change it to like this button, for example, 327, so you would just go to 7, and you'll see now it's going to press this Mac button, which is basically input 3 that it's putting on air. Let's put this one back. 3, 2, wait, what did I say it was? I always get lost with this number. 3, 3, 2. 3, 3, 2. There we go. And then it's doing other things like logging things and hiding the social graphic, logging these sheets. It's doing a timestamp marker in Notion, and what else is it doing? It's also resetting the log take back to 1. If you were on the log page, you could go here. So as you hit the take button, it'll advance different takes of a scene. That's another option for logging. Yeah. Yeah, hopefully that helps. I meant button target, this button or from text or from button target. I'm probably, so I think I'm losing track of what that question was. I meant target, invention, naming a button by expression instead of text. Button target, this button or from text. I'm sorry, I can't quite get my head around what you're trying to say. But in terms of what we're talking about with, you know, for the most part, you're probably just going to use the text function. And then if you want to create an expression, that's where you'd switch it over. And you can, within the expression, also add in text back into it by putting in certain, you know, parentheses and stuff like that. And there still is, I don't know how long this will be on for, but there's more of a sort of a legacy button text, which is, just so you know, you can pull it from, where is it? Internal B text, this kind of thing. So you can pull a button text by the variable internal semicolon B underscore text, and then the page number and the button number, which before it became the wider grid, this was like page 5, button 11. So button 11 would have been 8, 9, 10, 11. So it'd be this button here. You know, now this button is called 1, 2 on page 97. So just know that you can sort of access it that way if you wanted to, you know, put in the button text of page 5 is like, I can't even read that, it's so small. Part 1 YouTube, so it's pulling out the text from page 5 where you've put that in. Alrighty. Excellent. All right, I think that's probably about enough. So before we go, just to say that, so DJF 4.2 is available now on my website, davidjoshuaford.com. I've got it's free update for people who've got version 4, and there's discounted pricing for people who own version 3 and want to upgrade of 40%. And at the moment for everyone, there's also sort of a special discounted of about, you know, 10, 20 bucks off for people who want to buy now and sort of buy at this update. So go check out that on David Joshua Ford. And let me see if I've got my rights. I'm just going to hit this button. All right. As I said, davidjoshuaford.com is where you go to download the profiles. There's also a free profile there. So if you want to just get used to Companion and connect your ATEM and stuff like that, you can learn how to do that using that profile. And then my 4.2 profiles are available now. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments after the live stream. And I look forward to seeing you here again next week. Until then, take care.